This is Tom Fox, and I would like to welcome you to a new, exciting podcast series, Leading the Way, sponsored by StoneTurn. StoneTurn's Leading the Way podcast series highlights the top compliance, legal, and anti-fraud practitioners who are breaking down silos and setting new standards for excellence worldwide. Before we begin, a word about StoneTurn. Who do you turn to for help enhancing your compliance program? Who do you turn to for on-demand investigative services and data analytics expertise? Turn to us, StoneTurn. Since 2004, counsel, corporations, and government agencies have turned to the global advisory firm StoneTurn when facing their greatest challenges. Let StoneTurn lead the way when it comes to complex regulatory, risk, and compliance issues, investigations, and business disputes. In this episode, StoneTurn Partner Valerie Charles visits with Sam Pailca, Associate General Counsel, Microsoft, and Andria Kelly, Director, Anti-Corruption and Investigations, Starbucks, to hear their advice for the rising compliance practitioner and current CCOs alike.
Hi, everybody. It's Valerie Charles. I'm so glad to be hosting today, and we have a star-studded chat for you. Sam and Andria, do you guys just want to kind of each take a moment and maybe tell us a little bit about where you are and how you got there?
Sure. You said Sam first, so I'll go first, even though it's out of alphabetical order, Valerie. I'm Sam Pailca. I'm Associate General Counsel at Microsoft. I lead Microsoft's Office of Legal Compliance, which is the program, responsible for our Global Business Conduct Compliance program. And, I think I came to that role from a pretty unusual path. I had always been interested in, ethical issues underneath the law, like why is it this way? Who benefits? Who's going to be, put at risk or left behind? And nothing makes you think about those issues more than employment law and criminal law. And so when those two types of law intersected for me, when I began to do internal investigations of police officers, that really, it got me interested in thinking about those issues. I was involved in the early days of police accountability when people were just beginning to ask whether the police could police themselves. And that was during the early 2000s, which was the same time that the Enron scandal was making people ask the same questions about corporations. So it was an easy, shift sideways from accountability to compliance. So I joined Microsoft's still recent compliance program in 2007, and that is how I got there.
Interesting. Andria, do you want to tell a little bit about how you landed at Starbucks, and also maybe some of your crossover and friendship with Sam at Microsoft?
Sure. And that's going to be our relationship, Sam and I's relationship is probably going to be a main topic of this in terms of developing really good allies and mentors along the way. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach how I got started in the compliance field. As a young new attorney, I was working at an employment firm doing employment and other types of litigation. And very soon thereafter, I had a baby who was born early and was very, very sick, and I had zero support. So I'm sharing this as kind of from a female perspective. And as you all know, billable hours are a beast, and I was struggling. And so I took some time off, and during that time off, I really dug deep to understand what compelled me to the law. And for me, that was looking at issues proactively and how I could focus on practical business solutions, from training programs to mediating issues. And that's what gave me the most energy. So when the opportunity at Microsoft came up to address employee relations concerns from the get-go, I thought that might be something that would carry me through my first years as a as an attorney. And then after I went to Starbucks, the compliance field opened up to me because I developed a passion for and some knowledge about the business practices and how Starbucks used their mission and values to drive ethical decision making. And so I've been there for about 10 years as of August, and I'm responsible for our global anti-corruption program and internal investigations regarding standards of business conduct.
Fantastic. I mean, I think it's you know, those kinds of stories are important, and I think it's good to sort of, I don't know, humanize some of this, for sure. I mean, I think in compliance, we've seen more and more women becoming leaders in compliance, and I wonder if you guys have a sense of why. You know, is there something about what we do in compliance that lends itself a little bit towards female leadership, or is it a fluke of some kind?
Andrea, do you want to take that to begin?
I'll give it a whirl. You know, I think I'm hesitant to paint with a broad brush, you know, female versus male characteristics, but speaking from the women that I work with, the women that I've seen rise as leaders in the field, they've got three main qualities. And the one I think is the most important is that they take really concrete steps to empower other women and whomever they're working with. They do that with a sense of curiosity and humility, and they realize the strength in developing relationships and a reputation to being a trusted advisor. And going through a compliance program and aligning itself to the business rather than being focused on how you can come down hard on them. You know, that's just my take. Sam, I'm really curious on your thoughts.
Oh, I love that. I love where you started, you know, just that concept of there are women in compliance and women are doing well in compliance, in part because other women have sought them out and made a deliberate and conscious choice to, you know, recruit and to mentor and to support. And I fully credit that as a possible, you know, explanation for it. I think, you know, women also do well in compliance. For some, you know, they are accustomed to, you know, doing hard things. I think women are pretty good at making really difficult choices, delivering messages in a way that, like Andrea said, you know, sets up a solution and, you know, seeks to help people cooperate with each other and find a better path forward rather than sort of a, you know, dictatorial coming down from the Eiffel Tower. This is kind of way. So I think that has helped them to succeed because they are helping the companies that they work for succeed.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense.
Expand on that for just a moment.
Sure.
I think what's critical, and, you know, Sam has been instrumental in the path of my career and really what she provided to me, and I can tell you countless other females in the industry, is that she's a mentor, she's an ally, and she is a vault for those gut check moments we all need, especially in compliance. We have a saying between us that compliance is not for the faint of heart. I mean, stakes and emotions are high, and the ability, as Sam noted, to deal in a calm and collaborative manner is critical. And I also think, you know, this is just an aside, having a little bit of a sense of humor and humanism to the situation, it puts people at ease.
You know, I think that's right. I mean, in my personal career, when I was a junior law firm lawyer, I graduated in 2006, and I had kind of two distinctive categories of women partners. It was very interesting. Some were absolute mentors, and you could spot them that they were very interested in kind of investing early in some of the female partnership, not female partners, female young associates. And then you had this other category of women who I think they fought so hard to get where they were that they, I think, almost kind of shied away from being involved. It was almost like I had to do it the hard way, so you should have to do it the hard way too. And I'm glad to see that over the course of, my own career, I think from then to now, I see less and less of that. And I see more and more kind of, women helping each other. I don't know if was my own experience or if that's something you guys are familiar with as well. Yeah.
I think that I've seen, and certainly, seen it firsthand with, Andrea. I mean, for one thing, having an anchor and relationship within another, the same field and in the same city is really important. You can, that the calls, let's just get a gut check from you on this. Those are pretty frequent, and of course, we, keep the very high level. But I think it's really helpful to have a resource for, some affirmation that you're not crazy. You are really just taking the steps to do the hard things that, have to happen. And when you can, build up your resources and refresh your, tank in that way, it really helps you kind of show up every day, recommitting and with, energy and a path forward, to the work.
No, I think that's right. To shift gears just for a little bit, let's shift to kind of the current reporting climate. And I think there's a couple of things. I mean, one thing is at home, it's a little bit different. I wonder about how, sort of what had been, I think, an increasing demand for ethical behavior in the workplace, possibly ushered in by the Me Too movement and other things. And also, frankly, I think the younger set of employees, the millennial set, is a more demanding set of employees in terms of the actual putting your money where your mouth is in corporate ethics. What do we think about that? And also, has the work from home nature of things going on right now affected that?
Well, what I think about this the emerging voice of employees is that it's about time. I think it's fantastic that corporations are beginning to focus in a more intentional way on the fact that they're all about their partners, as I know Starbucks calls them, and that is a voice that had been missing from the corporate ethics conversation. And because Valerie, because in part the millennials and are kind of demanding that kind of effort and attention, it's going to make a really big difference. I think it is a new dynamic, and corporations are trying to strike the right balance between, of course, serving the needs of their shareholders, business needs, while at the same time really being guided and taking to heart what they're hearing from their employees, because it does affect the bottom line. Whether corporations can attract the best talent, whether they can retain the best talent, is a really significant part in whether they're going to be successful. So I think the employee activist voice is here to stay and will be a really fun dynamic and factor to watch going forward. And I'll stop there and let Andrea speak to that, and then we can, circle back to the question about the work from home climate. But actually, let me just add one more thing, Valerie, about your question about the reporting climate, Me Too, before we got to the work from home reporting climate. What I saw there was a similar, the bar was being raised. And the bar was being raised because the bar had been set too low. And so when employees were beginning to speak up in the wake of Me Too, they were beginning to speak up internally. They weren't just speaking up on their own behalf. they were speaking up on everyone's behalf. They were kind of making a call for higher standards, greater ethics, and to see the response to that. It wasn't just in the area of sexual harassment in the workplace or gender discrimination in the workplace. I also saw it reverberate in really simple, fundamental corporate ethics issues like conflicts of interest. Like, hey, does it make sense that you made this choice to give money to this vendor, for instance, when this leader had a prior relationship with that vendor, and bringing a spotlight to fundamental kind of corporate ethics issues in a way that was new, fresh, and felt really genuine. Andria, what was?
I am. There's nothing really I could add to expand on that. That there's a demand for equity and fairness, and that is the path going forward. And companies are doing the best they can, as you've noted, Sam, to get behind that, develop programs to foster that.
I mean, I also think there's, people think a lot about, compliance historically as being a cost center and being, sort of an insurance policy type thing. And I feel like now with employee engagement the way that it is, and with social media and reputational risk, there's so much more of a value add to have a good, solid, compliance and ethics program and culture. And also the risks are different, right? They're not just regulatory hiccups that you can have or serious problems that you can have, but they're also, it's harder to put your finger on, the reputational risk that comes from, I don't know, you think about, obviously there's the Ubers of the world and things like that. And then there's, the Wayfair walkout, things that aren't regulatory in nature, but just result of employee engagement or employee activism. I don't know if you guys have experienced that in your roles.
Well, I certainly have, and I'm going to respectfully just punt on that. There's a lot going on at Starbucks. It's a complex issue in that regard. So I'd love to hear what Sam has to say.
Yeah, thank you, Andria. No, I think I love, that's really important. And Susan Fowler and that memo, the Uber memo that she wrote, what I think was so important about it is that it showed the lie, to the position that workplace issues were different from compliance issues. The fact is that she raised about the sex discrimination at Uber were absolutely important to the compliance issues. They weren't separate. So I think that has been an area where I still think there's room for growth in how to think about the connection between those two issues. I like to explain it in really simple terms, like, look, if you have someone who's reluctant to complain about sexual harassment by their manager, that same person is also not going to complain about the manager's misuse of corporate resources. So to me, it's all part of the same culture, and I like to that. I've seen really recent application of us putting that to good use at Microsoft. So I'll give you a short example. We are currently, Microsoft business through other companies sell our software, indirectly, most of the time through resellers and partners. And part of that is trying to encourage and set standards for the compliance programs of our partners as well as our own. So we try to both. We use the carrot and stick approach. We try to encourage them to have the compliance programs, but we also, from time to time need to, exert penalties against them, or even stop working with them altogether if they don't have a strong enough program and there's too much reputational risk for Microsoft and us working with them. Well, right now, as we engage in some, assessments with partners, we are not only asking them, what are your anti-corruption policies, and how, do you have a good reporting line, and what are your training for, compliance issues. We're also asking them, what are your reporting practices, and what's the data around your, equity and diversity in hiring, and what's your record program for responding to complaints about workplace issues. And so then we're making our assessment. And just at this very week, I've been responding to an issue where the compliance program in another company, we've been engaging with them, trying to assess their program, and they have been consistently not responding to the females on the call and directing all of their comments and questions and follow-ups to the men on the call. And it happened once, it happened again, it happened in a follow-up call. And we finally decided to center that and raise the issue directly to the CEO and say, hey, we're having a hard time interacting with your team. If you really want to put your company's best foot forward, we're going to take steps to correct that right away. So, the big trend is marrying workplace issues with compliance and ethics issues, because they're all the same.
I agree with you. I mean, I feel like this sort of historical line between HR and, legal and compliance is, increasingly blurry. And I think that's a good thing.
Right. Agreed.
This is a little bit of a shift in topic, and I guess it's not a gender topic necessarily, but I think that's okay. I'm a person who I love the fact that the compliance is going in this sort of data-driven direction. I think that the concept of, look, you can't go to a compliance conference without people talking about AI and, predictive analytics. And I think most programs are not there yet. You guys might be in the minority, because I know both of your programs are very evolved and very good. But I do wonder sort of, I don't know, like, what do you think about that? There are these people that sort of suggest that data analysts will be critical on every compliance program moving forward. I mean, do you feel like that's real, or do you think that's something special that kind of, only certain companies that really have the right internal capabilities, like a Microsoft, will be able to do? Yeah.
Well, I think data analysis is super important for compliance programs. I think we need to take a look, and we're always looking at our investigations data trends. We're always in the process of trying to extract, more insights from the data. So it's always been a part of compliance programs in that regard. The predictive analytics is the next big step, and we are all in on that at Microsoft, as you can imagine. We definitely have a whole motions and teams that are designed to help us identify the highest risk transactions. But what I will say is, I don't think anyone needs to fear that data analytics are going to take the place of, seasoned compliance professionals, because the real issue is, okay, we've identified a high-risk transaction, what next? And, it always takes someone who can operate with intent, with the right degree of independence, to understand what that issue is, what risk it represents, and what the right thing to do in response to it is. So I like to say that predictive analytics is something that's going to serve up better information to the compliance professionals who will know how to act on it.
Yeah, this is Andria. I absolutely agree. It's additive and complementary, and the nuance and the consideration that goes into any issue, whether it's been identified by a human or a data analytics program, really needs seasoned compliance professionals.
Well, any other closing thoughts? I think we're sort of coming to the end of our time. So I if there's anything else that you have in general about, about gender issues as it relates to our industry, or maybe, how we're going to navigate things as we hopefully eventually emerge from this COVID cloud.
Yeah, I guess, I am an optimist, as Andria knows. We counterpoint sometimes. I think, that's important for leaders. Cynicism doesn't inspire. So I like to kind of look at, the good that I think lies ahead. But one thing that I'd say to round out the comment about the gender discussion and compliance, it's not over. Women are doing great in compliance. That's fantastic. But they're still working very largely in a world that are very male dominated in the C-suite, on the board, in the leadership organization. So we all need to continue to be allies and mentors. And I'll leave with one quick, tip that I like to use. If I'm lucky enough to suddenly find myself in a room, or with the, senior leadership team, not everyone gets to be in that room. So I want to make sure I always use my time in it. So I use this thing. I call name her. I name the person whose work I'm representing. I name the person who hasn't yet risen to the level that she's there. But I want to make sure we all continue to do that and not take our eye off the ball on advancing women in the law in general.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Thanks, Sam. The statistics are pretty dismal, and we have the opportunity, given the societal issues, given what we've seen with ability to work from home during this crisis, to elevate and kind of dispel any of the misgivings about creative work arrangements. And as Sam did, I want to leave everyone with the thought, champion those around you, elevate them, empower them, and create a space where they can share with you their challenges and help address those to the best of your ability. And thank you.
Amen, sister.
Yeah, guys, this has been great. I mean, I really feel like we could just go on forever, and it's so important. This kind of leadership and this kind of honesty, I think, is really important. So thank you both for participating in the podcast, but also thank you for the work that you're doing to keep us moving forward.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you,
guys.
Gary.
Thanks so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Leading the Way, a StoneTurn podcast. For more information about StoneTurn, check out the show notes for their website, which is www.stoneturn.com. Join us again next week for another episode of Leading the Way. Leading the Way is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.